Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished, successful, and respected entrepreneur and an author from Arizona, USA, Mr. Randy Lyman. Randy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Randy is an author, a mentor, and a speaker, and he's an author of a book titled The Third Element. So, Randy, my first question to you: you built multiple eight-figure companies and an Inc. 500 business. What was the exact moment you realized success was not the same as fulfillment?
Well, I really became clear about the difference back in 1989. I was had multiple seven-figure businesses at that point in time,
Hmm.
and I was young and feeling good about life and was happy about my success, but I wasn't really happy as an individual, and I definitely wasn't fulfilled. And I met a woman who I ended up spending 3 years with, who introduced me to the unseen spiritual, emotional side of life.
Wow.
And she helped me realize I had turned off my emotions in order to find success,
Mm.
hoping for happiness. But happiness is one of those emotions, and we turn any of our emotions off, we turn them all
Correct.
off.
Correct. Well said. Well said. You describe being disconnected from your own emotions at the height of your success. What did that disconnection look like in everyday life?
It was frustrating to know that even though I was clear in my mind as to what I wanted from life, that I didn't have the connection with the people around me to really truly create what I wanted to create. People
Mm,
only listen to us when they can feel us and when they trust us. And when we're only operating from a place of our mind, from a place of our thoughts and actions only with no emotions, people can feel that and they don't trust us and they don't interact with
mm,
us in the same
mm,
way.
Well said. You know, you're a man of science, a physicist. What initially made you skeptical about emotional or spiritual work?
Well, I have to go back to when I was growing up. I wasn't really exposed much to the idea of anything spiritual.
Mm,
And anything that I saw where people were emotional, and I didn't necessarily see the two as the same,
mm,
but what really made me shut down my emotions is I had friends in my neighborhood and their parents were emotional and their life was a mess. But spirituality is not something I grew up with. It was something I was curious about. And when I met Maria in 1989, then she introduced me to that.
interesting. What exactly is the third element, and why do most people miss it?
Well, everything in the universe falls into one of three categories: our thoughts and information, our physical body and the physical world.
Mm,
And then the third category, which I call the third element, is our emotions. And
mhm,
I believe that our emotions are the most important part of the human experience.
mm,
And the challenge is emotions are messy, they're unpredictable. And if we open up Pandora's box of emotions, then we have to deal with the what we call negative emotions
mhm.
as well as the positive emotions. And we don't get very many good examples of how to do that.
Correct, correct. But what, for my viewers and listeners, can you help me understand what is a negative emotion and a positive emotion?
Well, a negative emotion to me was loneliness, was betrayal, anger, frustration, those kind of
Mm,
things that
mm,
we feel as individuals in response to a story our mind makes up,
mhm,
and that's a physical energy that we feel. And positive emotions, which some people also avoid, are happiness, joy, admiration of people we love, and looking forward to positive things in our life. And some of us
mm,
have been taught not to be too happy. So we
mm,
both sides of the coin show up. We
mm.
avoid sometimes negative emotions most of the time. We avoid
Yeah,
those, and some
yeah,
people sometimes avoid positive emotions.
absolutely. Very well said. Randy also say unprocessed emotions silently shape our reality. Can you help me understand how this works in practical terms?
Well, aside from our negative silent emotions being in our energy field and making us less happy than we can be, people around us feel that. But I believe that God, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, something
mm,
bigger than us,
mm,
co-creates our reality for us moment to moment. And
mm,
that's in response to the harmonic resonance with our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions. So when I have
mm,
negative emotions, spirit wants to remind me of those so I can heal them. Not
mhm,
because source wants me to feel negative, but because source wants me to remember the opportunity to heal. And the law of attraction is obligated to remind us of those by bringing irritations into our daily life.
mm, mm. You just spoke about the law of attraction, and my next question is on the law of attraction. Tell me about the law of attraction and why do you believe this may not have worked for so many people?
Because they're only working on the mental aspect of it.
Mm,
We also need to take good care of our body and the environment around us. That sets an example for the law of attraction to respond to.
mm,
And emotions are bigger than time and space.
mm,
And I believe their energy is stronger than anything else we experience here. So when we have an old hurtful trauma that, again, that some part of us wants to release, the law of attraction will either hold back our progress relative to our thoughts or actions so that we can heal it,
mm,
or it just simply wants to remind us of an opportunity to heal. But if we're not clear emotionally, then our thoughts are not as effective as they can be. And
mm,
actually, even our actions don't influence the world as positively as
mm,
they can be when there's
mm,
underlying emotional trauma.
mm. Well said. A few minutes back, you were telling me about positive and negative emotions. How do positive and negative emotions influence or impact the law of attraction?
The law of attraction gives us more of what we are.
Mm,
And part of what we are or is in our energy field and our experience is our emotions. If I'm having a good day, people
mm,
experience this all the time. I start
yeah.
off happy in the morning for whatever reason, I get some good news.
Mm,
Probably my whole day is going to continue that way. I'm going to get more where I started. But if I
mm,
start out in a bad mood, I stub my toe against my bed or whatever happens, somebody gives me bad news, then the law of attraction says, I'll give you more of what you're
yeah.
feeling.
Mm,
And so I believe that's how the law of attraction interacts with our emotions, our
mm,
old unfelt emotions and our recent current emotions.
mm. Well said. You also talk about bridging science and spirituality. Tell me a little bit more about why you believe this bridge is real and where do you believe a lot of people misunderstand this bridge? And personally, I'm a big believer in the bridge between science and spirituality.
Excellent. So, well, almost 100 years ago in 1927, there were two different things happen in science that
Mm,
relate to quantum physics in a
mm,
way that I explain in my book,
mm,
The Third Element.
mm,
The first one is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which says that we don't know where a particle is and its velocity at the same time, which can be interpreted as we don't know the outcome of the future until the future really arrives. And then at the
mm,
same year, unrelated, was the double slit experiment, where particles were bombarded at a plate with two slits in it, and then they hit a photographic target on the backside. And when they
mm,
first did this experiment, these electrons and photons, these particles acted like waves.
mm,
They took the lid off and they watched the experiment with their human eyes. That's all they did. And suddenly, this wave energy acted as solid particles
mm,
simply because this energy was being observed. And I believe that all the matter we experience in our life every day is simply
mm,
energy being called in to act out the part of solid matter.
mm,
And whatever we experience is being called out to act in front of us to create our reality for our lessons and our experience and our growth moment by moment.
mm, mm. A lot of that, what you're saying, is something that we have always believed in Hinduism for a very, very long time in our scriptures. But moving on, do you believe nothing is random? And if so, should people interpret life's, how should people interpret life setbacks?
So nothing is random. And again, I talk about this in the book, not because I
Yeah.
need to sell books. I don't need to sell
No,
any
no,
books.
I
I just want people
understand.
to find, I want people to find peace and happiness. So
Absolutely.
the the reason we encounter problems is either in response to our thoughts, our actions, or emotions that need to be
Mm,
felt. And it's all for our growth. It's all for us to learn. It's all for us to look at life and say, even in the middle of chaos, if I change my approach, if I change my focus, I can find peace. And
mm,
when I surrender to God's will for me and with an intent of a positive outcome, then I can find that.
mm,
But when our ego fights what is best for us, when our ego wants to insist on being right, then we meet up with a lot of challenges in life.
mm, mm, mm. You're so right. You're so right. And when you talk of nothing being random, there's of course a lot of written on what's called secrets, that if you wish something enough number of times, something will happen. And of course, in India, we also talk about people have written about the 6 degrees of separation. We talk about the 3 degrees of separation.
Okay.
1.4 billion people, you ask an Indian, and they invariably know someone who knows someone. And that's where you realize randomness is not as random as we believe it to be. But coming back to you, Randy, and I'm sorry for this interruption, you experienced 30x business growth after integrating emotional awareness. What specifically changed in your leadership style, and how did you go about integrating emotional awareness into your business?
So first I had to work through my own anger and frustration, which was just there to cover up my loneliness and disappointment. So I had to do my own work outside of my workplace to become more clear, more emotionally clear
Mm,
and spiritually aware. And then showing up more clear helped. But I took it to the next step and I said, how do I interact with people so
mm,
that they will sense three different things that are important to people? First, they need to be acknowledged
yeah.
for who they are, the unique, beautiful individual they are. And I had to
Mm,
learn how to see the best in situations and find a way to genuinely praise people.
mm,
And then, second, people need to feel like they're contributing to the cause.
mm,
And so, when I found ways to acknowledge them for contributing and help them understand that they were an important part of the business, they felt better about their work.
mm,
And then, third, I had to create an environment where people felt like they belonged. People
mm,
were they belonged in a way of not just recognition from me, but
mm,
from the people they work with. Then once I was able to do this, then I had to also put my ego aside and show up as a leader being of service to
mhm,
the people that I served, the people I led.
mm,
I had to learn to be vulnerable. I had to learn to ask for help. I had to
mm.
learn to explain, hey, I've made mistakes in the past and I don't know what to do. Help me do this.
Yeah.
It was hard at first because I thought people would not respect me. In the end, people respected me more because I was
Mm,
authentic, I was genuine.
mm,
And when they said, wow, Randy is strong enough within himself, he is strong and centered, and he's able to admit his mistakes, he must
mm,
really have his act together. And so
mm.
it's it's the opposite of what I thought would
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. 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 Great response. You also say vulnerability is a leader's greatest advantage. In practical terms, what does that look like in a boardroom? And very often I've heard leaders say vulnerability may be seen as a sign of weakness.
So true power in science, we know true power comes from the ability to get
Yeah.
work done.
Mm,
And as a leader, that means I can't do the job. I can't do the work by myself.
mm,
So when I find ways to show up and the people I lead feel, not only think, but they feel that I'm there to support them and help them win,
mm.
they're on my side.
Yeah.
Whether that's working with team members, whether I'm working with my leadership team, or whether I'm working with members. When I'm working with board members and these board members know I'm there to help them succeed,
Mm,
then they listen and they cooperate and I get what I need. And they don't feel threatened by me. They don't feel they have to fight my agenda. I find a way to make all of our agendas work together.
mm,
And when I do that and they feel that, they're on my side.
mm. Amazing. Randy, based on a lot of research that you have done and with big companies you have led, what emotional blind spots do high achievers most commonly tend to have?
Frustration and blame.
Mm-hmm.
When something's not happening, we want to look at the outside world. And in business, as leaders, we have to guide, manipulate, motivate the outside world. That's our job, the people around us. But more importantly, we need to realize that the
Mm.
only true change in our world has to start with ourselves.
Yeah.
I can't ask the world to change until I make changes within myself. And for
Mm.
me, that's emotional growth and mental clarity.
Mm. You're so right. In one of my books, I have a chapter which is titled If Only, Only If. And most of our lives, especially in corporate boardrooms, goes away using these four words. If only this had happened, I would have done this. Only if this happens, will I do this. But it's a great example that you gave me on emotional blind spots. Thank you. Moving on, Randy, I've got time for three more questions. Why do so many successful people feel empty at the peak of their careers?
Well, a lot of us start off with the intention of feeling good or helping our family feel good.
Hmm.
But in order to deal with daily life, sometimes we have to shut off our emotions if we're not sure how to work with them.
Yeah.
And so once we shut them off, it's hard to turn them back on again. And when we
Hmm.
do,
Hmm.
it's messy. So we avoid feeling.
Hmm. Interesting. For someone afraid to feel deeply, what is the first safe step?
Writing down our fears, writing down how we think we're going to fix those fears and challenges through operations and actions and things like that. And then a third column is, what am I afraid of feeling, or what do I feel right now that doesn't feel good? So when our
Hmm.
brain is involved in the process,
Hmm.
and when we're writing out something on a piece of paper, it's pretty safe.
Hmm.
We can actually tap into what's the underlying feeling, what's the underlying emotion. And
Hmm.
if you can find a mentor or somebody else who has been down the road, or at least started down the road of emotional awareness, pretty sure they're going to be glad to help.
Hmm. Amazing. And my last question for you, Randy. If listeners take away one message from your book, The Third Element, what, in your view or opinion, should it be?
We don't have to do everything perfectly as leaders. We
Hmm.
always believe that if we're not perfect, people won't follow us and won't respect us.
Hmm.
But if we're willing to make mistakes, if we're willing to experiment and try different things in order to become more clear within ourselves and have a deeper connection with the people we lead, we're
Hmm.
going to do it wrong from time to time. And that's
Yeah.
okay. We don't have to be perfect.
Hmm. Great message. And on that note, and your amazing lesson, we don't have to be perfect. Randy, I just want to say what an amazing conversation I've had with you about life, I would say, which you've expressed so beautifully in your book, The Third Element. We covered some very interesting ground on leadership, on how the biggest strength that comes for each one of us is within us. And I think that's a very important and very powerful message you have given to us. And the faster we find this strength within ourselves, the happier we will be and the more successful we'll be, like you have been. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
You're welcome, Michelle. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.